This video is all about this crow painting and where I took the inspiration from. Welcome to my channel, Painting, Art Journaling and Creative Inspiration. So let's create together. And welcome back to my next video and welcome back to my studio. And in case you are new here, I'm glad you are here. Now today's video is about this crow painting, which I did on a 20 by 20 centimeter, roughly 8 by 8 inch on a deep canvas. It's all for my upcoming show in May. I have to have a little bit more paintings that are cohesive than what I have in the moment. Now, I took inspiration from my stack of crow, ravens, magpie painting, which I did 23 for the 100 days challenge over on Instagram, and I'm seriously thinking about doing it again for this year, but I'm not sure yet. Don't hold me on that. Anyway, I took inspiration from that by just going through my paintings, drawings, sketching, collages, and I have used acrylic, I have used charcoal, I have used collage, I did stitch, you name it. And yeah, so I was going through those and thought, which one would I like to turn into a painting? And I came across this guy here. So I wanted something similar where the crow is looking backwards. So that is what this video is about. Now, if you like what you see and if you could do me a favor and share and like and comment, that would be really appreciated. Now, take care. Till next time. Bye. Here we go on the 20 by 20 centimeter, roughly 8 by 8 inch canvas. I do draw a line and I use a ruler sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And as you can see, I made myself templates. I made myself a template from my crow, which I have just photographed and enlarged. And I also did use a circle because I wanted a moon or a sun in the background, whatever you want to call it. Not sure myself what it is. It is just something in the background. Very often I use the hot pink, neon pink, fluorescent pink as a background because I have the feeling it makes the color afterwards a little bit brighter. Now for the circle I want to use some gold paint. They are from Amsterdam. Most of my paints are from Amsterdam. I do have a little bit of golden and a little bit of Liquitex, but mostly I do have Amsterdam. And I like the deep gold they have. Now, like every metallic color, it is more translucent than other colors. So you always have to add at least 2 layers. Before I go in with my second layer of paint, I use a heat tool just to speed up the process a little bit. I'm that impatient. Yes, I want to go on with my moon or sun or whatever it is. I did speed up this video 7 times. I do not paint that quick. I also did edit out some parts just so it doesn't become too long, the video, and not too repetitive. By the way, did you see that I try to paint in circles more than like up and down or left and right, just to make it a little bit more looking like something round. And here I'm using the leftover paints in one of my journals. Now, I also want to add some collage, and for some reason, don't ask me why, I had the feeling some old maps fit very well with crows. What do you think? Do you also associate crows and maps together? Just leave me a comment down below. I'm really curious how you see that. As a glue, I use my gel mat with the brush and simply glue the map itself and the canvas. To make sure that the paper is really stuck down to the canvas, I use a brayer or a roller, whatever you call it. And then I go over the paper again with gel mat. I also use a piece of my handmade paper in the upper right corner. Again, I'm using gel mat on the canvas and on the paper, and then I go over with gel mat, just to make sure it is down. On the left corner I use a dotted tissue paper which I have printed on my computer. After some drying time, I use my handmade stencil to draw in my crawl. I can draw, I can paint. But sometimes I choose a stencil because tools are a part of the creative process, not as a replacement for it. Art is not about proving skill, it's about expressing an idea. And if a stencil helps making the process a bit quicker, I'm all for it. Now, I knew from the beginning I don't need that hot pink background. That wouldn't be what I want. So I did add two different blues, both are Amsterdam, but I also did add a little bit of matte medium to make the paint a little bit more translucent, a little bit more flowy. I also do play a little bit with some yellow, so to get more of a greenish tint for the blue, but I also add some white to lighten it up slightly. And sometimes your color choices aren't the right one, which means you're gonna grab for another color. This time it is manganese blue. And of course I tried to remove as much as possible from the previous paint. As always, I make sure that I have my paint going over the edges onto the deep edge so that you don't need necessarily a frame. That's the way how I like to display my paintings. So far I have used 1.5 centimeter flat brush, about half an inch, but now I did switch to a smaller brush, which is about half a centimeter or a quarter of an inch. Much easier to go into those tight corners. For the ground I use a burnt sienna. It is not my last layers. I like to work in layers and add more and more colors just to make the color deep and rich. So yeah, there's gonna be more color coming. So here comes my next color. It's a tealish color and I use it in combination with some white. Sometimes I have like both the white and the teal on my brush and let the mixing happen on the canvas. I also do add a little bit of scratching to reveal again a little bit of the pink. I want the pink to show through a little bit. I like that. Just makes an interesting painting in my humble opinion. Again, I let it dry for a while now. I can go in with my Nero soft charcoal. It's an oil-based charcoal. It doesn't have to be the one from Cretacolor. There are any brands out there. This one is easy to find for me. I have pulled out several colors to paint my crow. From top left to the bottom there is a black, a graphite, a metallic graphite, an ultramarine blue, a light teal, a white and a light purple. I like to paint my crow with these colors. It mimics a little bit the iridescent which they have in their feathers. For the beak I make some gray with the black and white. Now, as I mentioned in other occasions, I don't do scientific crows or ravens or magpies. It is purely my imagination. Now for the focal point, which is in this case the crow, I go in with even more layers than with the background. You're gonna see me putting up layers and layers with all those colors on the palette just until I'm happy with the look I have achieved. The other thing I want to mention here, I don't know whether you have noticed it, but around the head I went with just small strokes, always in the direction where the feather would go. But when I come down to the body, I take longer strokes because the feathers are longer there. So that's the reason why I do it that way. And by the way, instead of a flat brush, I did start using a pointed brush for the feathers. And for the details around the eye, I use a Posca pen. I do apply the paint, but then I dab it off a little bit so that it isn't so stark white. So far, so good. In general, I'm pretty happy with the crow, but I need to add a little bit more details, partially with my oil-based charcoal, partially with my brush, and adding a little bit more details, refining some areas so that I can be happy in the end with my crow. Not quite happy with the ground though, so I add a little bit of Titan Buff, very thin layer, very watered down, so that the burnt sienna still shows through. Here I'm using a piece of deli paper or tissue paper, whatever you have on hand, because I want to protect the crow a little bit for my next step. And my next step is adding a stencil with the cosmetic sponge. The stencil is, by the way, from a diary from my grandma, which I turned into a stencil. There's a word in the stencil which is Hoffnung in German, which means hope. I wanted to have it certainly readable down below the crow. Now, I did bring in my jelly plate and some gold paint and my special roller, which I made from a foam roller, just cutting out pieces so that I have like stripes there. And the leftovers I'm gonna use all over the painting. Again, I'm going over with my oil-based charcoal, just as always, layers and layers, even with the charcoal. Okay, we are getting near the end. This is usually my last step. If I do it, I don't always do it, but very often I also use in the end some oil pastels or some Neopastels just to add a little bit more something something. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, leave a nice comment and share. See you next time.